Welcome to a new video. Let's take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. The first story is called Don't Question the Rules. The nursing home I work in has gone through multiple members of management. Every time we get a new director of nursing, we have a mandatory meeting where he or she will introduce themselves and the new rules they put into place. One of the ghosts of the past was one I'll call Karen. She had the haircut, the attitude, and the shrill voice. The first rule Karen set into place was that one nursing assistant had to be on the hall at all times, absolutely no exceptions. We were seriously understaffed, so it wasn't always possible to always be in the hall. Being one of the assistants, who has to work the hall alone a lot because there are no people who will come in to help, I, of course, tried to explain what the flaw was in her rule. She did the "I'm the dominant one" head tilt and interrupted me to say, "You don't need to question my rules." The next rule Karen set was that there would be absolutely no cell phone usage in the facility. All cell phones had to be left in our vehicles or in a basket next to the time clock, no exceptions. This ticked off even the members of the administration. The scheduler will text people to ask if they will come into work. The nurses use cell phones to communicate with the director when they aren't in the facility. People grumbled, but she yelled, "These are the rules. If you don't like it, you can find another job." Nursing assistants are a dime a dozen. That is exactly what some of us did. We lost 4 more people right after that meeting, making us even more understaffed. This ticked me off because one of them was the best partner I ever had. The first day I had to work alone after that meeting, I kept her words in mind. One assistant on the hall, at all times, no exceptions. One of our very important residents hit the call light within 10 minutes of my shift, wanting some brownies from the kitchen. The kitchen is off the hall, so I go straight to Karen's office, which luckily was on my hall. "Karen, I'm the only aide here and this resident wants some brownies from the kitchen. Why are you telling me? Go get them for her. You said there has to be one assistant on the hall at all times. I can't leave the hall to get it. Then get another assistant to go get them for you. You said we can't use cell phones, so I have no way to contact another aide." She gets up from her desk in a huff and gets the brownies. When she returns, she shoves the brownies in my hands and says, "Don't bother me for petty mess again." Okay. Even more compliance. Because she was stubborn, this went on for a few hours, so I'll shorten it into a list. No residents were harmed during this. Keep in mind that this all happened within one shift. I work on a very demanding hall with nearly 40 people on it. Before you say that there shouldn't be one nursing assistant for 40 people, trust me, I know. 3 residents wanted washed clothes or towels, but I didn't have any, so I couldn't go get them one. 5 more residents wanted snacks from the kitchen, but I was the only nursing assistant and couldn't get them any. 2 residents wanted showers, which I could have done, but I wasn't allowed to leave the hall to find an aide to watch mine while I did it. The trash stunk like holy hell, but I couldn't leave the hall to take it out. So it stunk up the hallway and Karen's office. I may have moved the trash bin closer to her door. I couldn't pass out ice water because I couldn't leave the hall to get the ice cart. Supper trays came out and I couldn't leave the hall to go get it. I'll never forget the look on Karen's face when I knocked on the door and told her that getting the residents fed shouldn't count as a petty mess, so I needed her to go get the trays. Luckily Karen was staying late and this didn't last longer than this one day. The residents kept complaining and finally, our nosiest resident crashed the mandatory meeting, lead a lot of the complaining residents to Karen's office. One of those residents was very important. She yelled at Karen so loud because she couldn't get her ice that people started peeking around the corner to see what was going on. Karen tried her hardest to defuse the situation and explain to her why the rule was in place, but she was having none of it. Karen didn't know that she used to be a nurse, and that's why the director of the facility made her a very important resident. After her tongue lashing, Karen came up to me, seething with anger. Through her gritted teeth she said, "You can leave the hall as long as it pertains to patient care." She slammed her office door so hard that something inside of it fell. I heard her say scream on the other side of the door after the crash. Karen didn't last much longer after this because the facility had a lot of demanding residents and an even more demanding director. I don't know what was happening on the administration side, but I hear horror stories all the time about it. For your interest, when it came down to the things the residents were requesting but I couldn't get, I was going to get them anyway once Karen left. Karen tended to stay until 8 sometimes, and the day I worked alone happened to be one of those days. The next story is called, I'm Happy to Pay More for It. I was shopping for a new car a few years ago and found one online that was selling for $800. So I go and check the car out with my mechanic friend. I'm not expecting much, truth be told. An $800 car is, well, an $800 car. I am surprised, however, to find that the $800 car is in pretty good condition. So I ask the seller why it's so cheap. I think there's a transmission problem. $2,000 or more to fix it. So we take it for a test drive and the car keeps jerking when accelerating. I'm thinking that this could be any number of problems, but afterward, my mechanic buddy lets me know that he thinks it's something far more trivial than a transmission problem. A 10-minute fix, maybe. I don't want to be dishonest, so I say, hey, I don't think it's as bad as you think. I would hate to buy this for such a low price if the problem is more minor than that. Would you mind if my buddy, who's a mechanic here, takes a look? If it ends up being the transmission or worse, you've got yourself a deal for $800. If it's something minor, you can up the price because I don't want to cheat you. The dude explodes. It's an $800 car, either you deal with it or you don't. It's as is, do you know what that means? Either you buy the car or you don't. So I do. I pay him $800 in cash and my friend pops the hood. He takes off the distributor cap, cleans it, replaces it right then and there. And then he says loudly, there you go. That should fix it. Wow, that transmission looks almost brand new. I tell you, buying this car for $800 is a steal. You could probably resell this right now for $3,000. Just as loudly I said, you know, I could have paid $3,000 for this car if I knew the fix was that easy. The seller is standing there, the $800 still in hand, watching. He interrupts. Hang on a second. Before he could even say another word, I closed the hood and unlocked the doors. Thanks for the car. You cheated me. You're not getting this for only $800. I'm not sure where he was going with this. Did he expect me to pay him more money now? Of course not. I opened the driver's side door and got in, rolling down the window. Before I drove off, I smiled at him. Either you deal with it or you don't. It's as is, do you know what that means? And I drove away. The last story is called, It's More Important to Be Right Than to Do Your Job. This happened over the course of the summer of this year. I work for a small warehouse distribution center that has a grand total of 10 employees. 2 of those 10 work in the warehouse and I happen to be one of the 2. Over the course of the last few years, the company has been becoming increasingly more profitable because the volume of work has been steadily increasing, leading us to the need of hiring a 3rd full-time employee for the warehouse, bringing us to a grand total of 11. Our recruiting process is somewhat automated because we use an agency to send candidates our way rather than going through the whole ordeal of taking out an ad in the newspaper or posting a job offer online. The only parts that our company plays in all of this is picking up the phone to place a call with the agency and interviewing the candidates. It wasn't great at first because the candidates that got sent our way had major red flags. And that's when our idiot hire entered the fray. He was 17 at the time and on a sabbatical from college because he didn't quite have a career choice made. He seemed decent enough to our manager and endeared himself with his story about having a rough childhood and wanting to save up money throughout the year in order to pay for his education. Given our lackluster candidates and our semi-urgent need for help, the manager decided to justify his pick with, he seems to have a good head on his shoulders and a job like this will really give him a lot of help in life. Now, I have nothing with being a good Samaritan and helping out whenever possible. But being told that we're hiring someone based on the idea that we're going to provide work ethics and life skills to a teenager on top of teaching him how to perform manual labor. My colleague and I exchanged a look that didn't need any explanation. The following Monday, we met our new teammate and just as expected, on the surface, he seemed perfectly normal. Solidly built kid, with a lost yet enthusiastic look on his face because this was his first real full-time job in the grown-up world. Just like most people, he wanted to make a good impression on the boss who hired him and prove to everyone that he belonged in the company. On our end, we were just happy to have an extra body on the floor because at least that would be the start to our relief from our ever-mounting stack of work. We did take the time to make him feel welcomed and help accommodate him on the first day while the boss wanted to give him good training. So as expected from a kid working next to the boss that hired him, he did his best to impress and to his credit, he did well for the first 2 days. And that's where it pretty much took a nosedive. I'm all for the spirit of helping people improve themselves when they are actively showing efforts, but this kid was something else entirely. As I've said before, I'm all for self-improvement over time. I'm far from being an exemplary employee because I've had my share of issues to contend with over the years and I'd like to think that I'm coming out on top. But this was something that belonged in the hands of social workers. By the end of the first week, we took notice that the kid had anxiety issues and felt a little out of place because he wasn't accustomed to doing physical labor for a whole workday of 8 hours. We did our part to get to know him a little better and reassure him that we were there for him to talk to because we're pretty open to most subjects of discussion. And given how he's the youngest person in the building, we'd have no trouble guiding him with work and some of the issues he had outside of work. After the first weekend, that's when things became weird and just downright unprofessional. It started small. He'd show up to work on time, only to jump onto the couch in our break room with his outside shoes still on and proceed to try and go back to sleep for whatever time he had before the start of every shift. I understand that we have lives outside of work and that sometimes we can suffer from insomnia, but to see that at the start of every workday? For the record, we asked about it and he simply stated that he has trouble waking up despite sleeping over 8 hours a night, every night. Then there were the distractions from his constant texting. And his general lack of availability at and for work. How is this possible, you ask? Try spending the first hour of your shift locked in the bathroom every day. Or planning things during workdays that requires time off from work. Again, I've got no issues with planned appointments because we all have lives outside of work. But with this kid it felt like every other day, there was a plan to get out of work and constantly miss shifts left and right. Throughout the first month, we did our best to talk to him in a mentoring fashion to get his head in a better place professionally and hoping that it would trickle down personally. What a surprise we were in for after that point. I did voice my concern to the manager that hired him that we weren't against the idea of working with the kid because he did show some signs of improvement as far as the work went, but we were not inclined to raise a child for him. That's not what we were getting paid for. And even if we were to get paid extra for those services, it would never cover the deep-seated issues of this kid. As far as my manager was concerned, all he heard was, "I made the right call by hiring a 17-year-old because this will make a great public relations pitch for our company, thus making me look awesome and benevolent." Now after a month of getting to know someone, eventually you either start getting along or you don't. The mixed baggage we got from this kid made it so that he got along with both of us in a friendly manner, but he took a better liking to my colleague. Outside of his general avoidance from manual labor and general absenteeism while getting paid for it, for whatever little work he did, at least we could count on him to do the bare minimum. I was actively contributing with my colleague in educating this kid about life. Until the day he decided to make my bad list. Somewhere at the beginning of the second month, the idiot and I get into a verbal spat. He gets tasked with putting some items back on the shelf and he's taking his sweet time by faking his ignorance about the assigned places or what the products were. I didn't expect him to have intimate encyclopedic knowledge about the products, but if after a month you can't be bothered to remember some of the best sellers that we carry, you're definitely not showing much promise anymore. Because of his time-wasting tactic, I snapped and called him out and told him that he was being inefficient. Apparently that was the straw that broke the camel's back. Shortly after, I get called into the office and get reprimanded by the manager and get explicitly told not to tell the idiot anything anymore that could be misconstrued as me bossing him around. At the end of the workday, my colleague inquired about what happened and advised me to keep my distance. I did my part in trying to get him to be productive, but clearly, the new guy was just in it for himself and would not amount to much of anything as far as this job was concerned. Later on, in the evening, I had a chat with one of my friends about the happenings from that day. He also advised me to just let the kid be and to not bother telling him anything anymore. He's not my employee and I was not personally responsible for him. There was no reason to tell this kid anything anymore. And so I stopped talking. I waved hello in the morning and goodbye in the afternoon. I dumped him on my colleague, who played along and just let all of the red flags just reappear one by one. It took him a few days to catch on that I was giving him the silent treatment, but when he finally figured it out, a light bulb went off in his head. He was under the impression that his little complaint to management shut me up completely, thus giving him a free card to do as he pleased without any consequences. He started off small with a few idiocies over here and purposeful mistakes over there, and while always eyeballing me. These were all things we had trained him for that he decided no longer applied to him. Since management told me to no longer tell him anything that could constitute an order, I stayed quiet and slowly let him escalate. He wanted to disappear in the bathroom for 4 hours a day? Sure, go ahead. Waste packing materials for cool sound effects? Sure, why not? Scream obscenities at the top of your lungs? Of course. Make inappropriate jokes to people who clearly don't share your sense of humor? Absolutely. constantly joked with the manager about not getting fired because he was convinced he was in good graces and had him in his back pocket? It would take less than 2 weeks before the manager that hired him to start paying attention for the first time as far as work output and performance were concerned. Indeed, he was shocked and disappointed. What really disappointed him the most was his general unprofessional behavior and incessantly childish antics. Who would have thought that a 17-year-old wouldn't have been a good fit for a serious full-time job? So a few days before my planned week of vacation time, I get called into the office once again. This time, it's the manager telling me that he was less than thrilled with the kid's performance at work and that he was getting rid of him after my return from vacation. So for the time remaining, I was told not to say anything and to keep doing what I was doing and to essentially just deal with it for a few more days with this unleashed buffoon. Needless to say that I walked out of that office with the biggest grin behind my best poker face. 1 week later, I find out that the kid had been let go a day and a half into my vacation time because they were able to find and hire someone else to replace him. As the story goes, the kid walked into the front offices haphazardly to talk to the manager and walked in on him giving an interview to the guy who would eventually replace him. Good riddance. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. Let me know what you think about the stories in the comment section below. Have a great day. Bye bye.